Hey friends, welcome back to the Brewing Couch. Today we're brewing with maple syrup. Let's go. I'm gonna grab a Pilsner for this because we're talking about a lot of sugar today. So maple syrup is one of those tricky adjuncts, and we've all heard it. You can't really brew with maple syrup because it ferments out. You know, I've tried adding it in primary, I've tried adding it in secondary, I've tried fenugreek seed, tertiary, maple gumbo, maple soup. I'm just kidding about the last two, but I did try quite a bit of methods, and I think I got some things to work. And I've made a couple of beers with maple that were fantastic, and the maple was pretty in your face. So I'm gonna walk you through that process. Okay, so there are three ways that you could brew with maple syrup. You could use, number one, you could get a used bourbon barrel that had maple syrup held after that. So some maple syrup producers love to age their syrup in bourbon barrels. That adds a bourbon flavor to it. It's awesome, but it's even better is aging your beer in that barrel after. You could do like a stout or barley wine, but I know it's expensive just to brew a maple syrup beer is to get a whole barrel and age a beer in it. So there are two other methods that you could do. Number two, you could use extract. There's a lot of bad maple extracts out there, but there are a couple of good ones. I've heard really good things about Loran's oils, maple flavoring, but my personal favorite that I've been using is Amaretti's maple flavoring. That one's kind of pricey, but you get what you pay for. It costs money because it's good, and it also has the 2-ounce little vial. It has tons of uses if you brew 5-gallon batches. You could get solid 10 batches out of it, I believe. So I highly recommend that one. But not only that, I recommend combining it with a third method. The third method is back sweetening. Back sweetening is a mead and cider making practice where you essentially kill off the yeast so they can't ferment anything else. Here's how you do that. You ferment your beer all the way out. You make sure you do diacetyl rest, cold crash the yeast out, transfer that beer into a secondary fermenter or keg, whatever works for you. And then you want to add a couple of things. First, you want to add a Campton tablet, which is potassium metabisulfite, that prevents the yeast from multiplying. Second thing you want to add is potassium sorbate. Potassium sorbate is a wine-making agent that's used to prevent fermentation in wines, just for safety reasons. It's commonly added there. You want to add 2 grams per gallon of potassium sorbate, and then you want to let the beer rest for a day before adding your maple syrup. Add the maple syrup. I use about 16 ounces per 5-gallon batch or so. You could do more depending on how much sweetness your beer can handle and how much flavor you want in there. And let it rest for 5 to 7 days. I don't usually get fermentation from there. I might get a few bubbles, but it's usually good to start carbonating and do another cold crash there. After that, you're basically done. Add your extract if you need any more extract in there to add some more flavor. But go easy on those. They're very potent ingredients. And that's how we basically brew maple syrup beer. With that, why don't we go and make one? So I got a stout lined up. So let's go dose it with maple syrup. I'll walk you through the Brewday, ingredients, and tasting. Let's go. So I started my brew day with local water, aiming for 150 ppm chloride to 50 ppm sulfate, and the mash pH being 5.3. I then began to mash in, only to realize that the brew bag was indeed not inside the foundry, but there was only grain in the foundry, so I racked the water out, got the grains out so I didn't boil them later, and restarted the whole thing. When I finally did mash in, I was able to mash in the following grist. I had 57% two-row, 10% malted oats, 8% chocolate, 8% Carafa Special II, 5% caramel 60, 5% double roasted crystal, 5% pale chocolate, and 2% black malt. That's about 10% roast with 8% debittered and 5% pale chocolate, which is lightly roasted. So yeah, this is quite a bit of roast for its grain bill, but the maple syrup is gonna add a ton of sweetness, so we're gonna need to stand up to all that sugar. I bittered this beer with 20 IBU Loral hops, nothing crazy, and fermented it with US 05. I let this beer ferment all the way out, and then you all know what happened. I started things off by adding 16 ounces of maple syrup toward the end of fermentation. This fermented the beer down a few more points and increased original gravity to about 1085. But that's not it. Since the yeast chewed through the syrup, there wasn't much residual maple flavor left. At that point, I had transferred the beer to keg, and it was time to add the actual maple flavor. This is where the Campton or potassium metabisulfate as well as potassium sorbate came in. I crushed a whole Campton tablet, as well as 10 grams potassium sorbate, and I put them into the keg. I waited for 24 hours at room temperature and then added 16 ounces of maple syrup the following day. I then let the beer rest for 5 days at room temperature just in case there was any re-fermentation. And I don't think there was much re-fermentation at that point. And just when you thought I was done, I was not. I wanted to make this a lumberjack style beer, so I also wanted to add coffee. So that's exactly what I did. I went to my local coffee roaster called Tugboat Coffee, and I got some of their premium beans that I personally really like in coffee, and I threw them in. I used 3 ounces of whole beans, and I steeped them in a cold keg for 48 hours before pulling them out. After that, I carbonated and the beer's now ready to taste, so let's try it out. All right, so check out how this baby came out. Dark black, nice, dark foam. Cannot see through this for the life of me. There's way too many roasted malts in there for that. Dark brown frothy head, which I absolutely love. So enough wasting time, let's go for the aroma. Whew, that's coffee. As soon as you pour that, all you get is coffee. But on the nose, it's a little bit of this like toffee brittle kind of vibe, along with the coffee. Cool. Well, no maple on the aroma, but I think it's so fresh and there's a bunch of coffee in this. I think it's taken that over. Oh, wow. Okay. So definitely maple in the finish there. Here we go. Has that sweetness and that mapley sugariness that kind of comes out in the back end, which is cool. On the front, it's still that like toffee fudge, which is kind of crazy. There's no toffee or caramel that was hurt in the making of this. Just a bunch of caramel malts, double roasted crystal, Crystal 60, pale chocolate, there's a bunch of that, as well as Carafa Special II. And it's this like fudgy toffee almond note with a hint of coffee and a bunch of maple syrup on the back. Wow, really cool. There's so many dimensions to this, you know? It's like, first you get the coffee bitterness, followed by the stout body and the brittle, caramel, coffee, toffee, and then the finish is like maple, and it's like, kind of sits in your mouth, which is dope. Love that. The coffee also brings another dimension to this, which I think is super cool. I think you get this nutty note from it. I think that's something that the medium roast beans will bring to your beers. It's like dark roast is just gonna bring a lot of roast and not much flavor. Blonde roast is gonna bring no roast and probably like nutty and fruity flavors, leather. But medium roast is a nice in-between. It has a little bit of that traditional coffee roast, but also has a lot of the nutty flavors or fruity, whatever the variety is gonna throw. So super cool. I think there's a lot of dimensions and a lot of layers to this beer, which is pretty cool. And that's what I love about stouts and beers like these, honestly. You add so many malts in there that they're complex beers, super complex, but they're fun to unpack. You know, you sit down and you really think about this. You're like, wow, what's this flavor and that flavor and the third and the fourth. But yeah, so if there's anything I would improve about this beer, there's a lot of really good flavors, but if I was going solely for maple here, I would have probably added Amaretti's extract. I was out of extract, and I know I said that I usually add it, and I do. I was all out, it was expensive, and I didn't have time, so I didn't get any, but do get some, and it'll take the maple flavor of this beer to the next level. So I kind of missed out on that, but not that I made a bad beer in any way. So that was the only thing I think I would improve in this, if anything. Also happy with this label. Check the way this came out. Absolutely awesome. Been messing around with AI and some of this can art. And these have been coming out cool. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, you actually have one of these coming your way. So watch out for that. If not, I hope you could try to brew with maple at home, because this is an absolutely killer technique. 10 out of 10, cannot recommend it enough. So brew with some maple syrup. And I hope this video is helpful. I'm having a blast making them. So if you like them, hit that like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers, guys.